Hi guys. So this is a conversation I've wanted to have for a little while, or a discussion I've wanted to have for a little while, and it seems the appropriate time. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Tesla Model 3. Now, it seems an appropriate time because Tesla is now, they've tooled their factory, they're producing sort of the first prototypes for road testing and, like safety testing, sort of that sort of thing. And they say they're on schedule to start regular production in July, and that they expect to start delivering to customers by in volume by September. So this seemed like an appropriate time to talk about this, and because I feel like, as far as the automobile side of Tesla's operations, the Model 3 will sort of be the make or break for them, because they're going to have to commit a lot of money to this, and it's a high volume operation. Now, the thing is, I've also heard a lot of sort of expectations from people, and some of them seem to be, unreasonable or unrealistic. But I figured I wanted to chime in with sort of my expectations for the car, and if I think some of those expectations are unrealistic, why? And some of the things that I've heard are, oh, it's going to have a 0.21 coefficient of drag. It's going to charge at 300 kilowatts. It's going to be able to go 300 miles on a single charge. It's going to have less than a 3 second or a sub 3 second 0 to 60 acceleration. Its battery pack's only going to have to be 45 kilowatt hours, and it's going to be as spacious as a Model S. And so some of those things I think could happen, but I think some of them are also unrealistic, and I think you have to realize that there are also going to be trade-offs in anything that you do. Now, the electric vehicles trade-offs are a little bit different than internal combustion vehicle. The trade-offs don't always match up. One of the examples of that is, with an electric vehicle, more power actually means more efficiency, which usually you don't see in like gasoline-powered vehicles. But then some of the other trade-offs are a little bit different. So like less weight, so the lighter the car is going to be, is actually the less range you get in an electric vehicle, at least currently with current battery technology. And the whole idea, and this is more of a universal trade-off, but the lower the coefficient of drag, the less room you have, the less space you have in the vehicle to work with. And the faster the acceleration for an electric vehicle especially, you're going to see less range or less efficiency, because in order to facilitate that acceleration, you need to have the right kind of tires, and those tires are typically stickier and are going to result in more rolling resistance and a lower range. So, what are my predictions for the Tesla Model 3? I think it's going to be very successful, highly successful. We already have, 400,000 people who have put down $1,000 to reserve a spot. So I don't think it's going to be lacking in customers. The question is, of course, can Tesla keep up with demand, which for the next couple of years, I think it's going to be very difficult for them, but, that's a good problem to have. But I want to focus specifically, right, because this is something that's been promoted as a $35,000 electric car. So I want to, say my predictions for what I expect the $35,000 version of the Model 3 to look like, because pie in the sky predictions for the $60,000 to $70,000 Model 3, anybody's guess, right? But the base Model 3, I expect it to have similar power to the Tesla Roadster, about 200 to maybe 215 kilowatts for the base, and I expect it to weigh about 3,800 pounds. So all told, that those two numbers combined, I would expect the base Model 3 to be running probably less than 6 seconds 0 to 60 time, but not a whole lot, like probably around 5.5 seconds 0 to 60, which is good, and it puts it right where they need it to be in terms of competing with, say, base BMW 3 Series, right? Now, in terms of the battery, I'm really hoping what they do is what they did with the Model S60, where it's a software limited version. I think what they're going to do with the Model 3 is release it with something around a 70 kilowatt hour gross battery pack. So maybe 70 to 75 kilowatt hours tops. That's the gross. So they're going to have a buffer in there and everything else. So you won't see that much of it being usable. I expect that, there to be at least 2 trim levels, and probably the base will have about 50 to 55 kilowatt hours usable, with the option of purchasing and unlocking it to maybe 65 kilowatt hours usable for the upper end. The charge rate based on that, I will be surprised if it has a peak charge rate of faster than, say, 120 kilowatts. Now, again, that's peak. Now, in terms of the average charge rate, I would say you're looking at probably closer to something like 80 to 100, which means you're more than likely going to reasonably be able to recharge on a supercharger in about half an hour, right, up to your max usable capacity. So all of that means those are very good signs, and I think it's a very good car. And I worry, right, because I want to make sure that people's expectations are in line with what they get, right? So Tesla has a very good corporate reputation, so they're not likely to get hit with a lot of blowback if, say, their car doesn't perform on the upper end like people have been predicting, right? 300-mile range on the EPA and, acceleration times sub 3 seconds. I don't think any of that is reasonable. I don't even think it's reasonable to expect. I do think that the upgraded version of the Model 3 will have some clear advantages, and I think that the acceleration will improve, having all-wheel drive will improve that, but again, also that costs weight. And ultimately, too, you're going to be limited by the size of the battery, and the other thing is, it's very likely that Tesla will end up having to sell their base Model 3 at a loss, which is unfortunate, but also it's highly doubtful that the people who are buying it are going to be buying the base Model 3. You look at the numbers for the 40 kilowatt hour Tesla Model S, right? The demand just isn't there for that. But the other key point that I want to close on, and this is a different sort of expectation for the car, because I think the car is going to be fine, and I think it's going to live up to its expectations, is the production delivery time. So even if Tesla meets all of their production delivery goals, if you don't have a reservation right now, you're not going to be able to buy one of these cars for at least another 18 months. So that's another thing to be considering. So for everybody who's sort of sitting on the sidelines, watching the Model 3 and how it progresses and develops, your opportunity to get one might have already passed long ago. So you might be waiting until the late 2018 before you can even put in an order and expect to receive it in any reasonable amount of time. But I'm curious what you guys think, if you think I'm off base, if you think I'm not being realistic about what we can expect from this car. I personally am looking forward to seeing them on the road. I would really like to, because for me, it might be the car that replaces my Volt when that time comes. But again, I'm going to sort of wait. I'm not in a rush right now to replace that car. So I am kind of curious to see what happens with it and how things pan out. All right. Thanks, guys.